Oh, and I totally understand your reasoning. I honestly do. It's just if he wasn't hit by that melt truck, I think the laundry would have been done by now. Hi! Welcome back to my channel, Conglomeration Cat. It's Pumpkin and I saying good morning. It literally is morning. It's about 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Yeah. You know what? It has been quite the work week, man. Being shorthanded and working in retail is never fun. So if you can go on Indeed.com and get yourself a job and support us, that would be great. So we wouldn't have to be in the world of retail. We could just be doing YouTube videos all day long. That'd be nice. Thanks. Hey, just want to give a big shout out to everybody that has watched my last video. I'm very moved that I have got new subscribers. The views have apparently been going through the roof. This has been so much fun for me. She's enjoyed it too. It makes me have more of the initiative to do more of these things. It's a little weird being in front of a camera and knowing that everyone's going to be seeing you, but I think once you get past that uncertainty and that awkwardness, it becomes a heck of a lot of fun. So I want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing, liking, commenting. I think this will be the beautiful start of a beautiful friendship. So thank you guys. Really do appreciate it. I had so much fun doing the last video that I think I am going to do another 10 favorite albums that I listen to the most. Because face it, if anybody has an album collection that's over 100, 300, 1,000, it's virtually impossible to pick just 10. Just can't happen. So hope I'm not breaking the rules on the vinyl community by doing yet another 10. But if it starts a new trend and people want to hop on board and do another 10, let's do it. All right, we're going to start out with some good old coffee in my little cat mug. Because it's that good. Again, these are not in any kind of chronological order. They're just kind of picked at random, but these are my another top 10 that I'd like to start with. First one I got is Stevie Wonder's Innervisions. This is my favorite Stevie Wonder album. Why? Mainly because he plays every single thing on this album. It's amazing how many multi-tracks he's got going on. Drums, synthesizers, keyboards, vocals, harmonies. He does it all. I think he was barely 22, if that, when he did this. Quite an amazing album. Great song selection. Everything from, Higher Ground. Living for the City is amazing. Gosh, what a fantastic song. Always kind of cringed when they played over the radio because they cut out quite a lot due to length and some subject matter, but he really hits home with this. Pretty controversial for its time. But the instrumentation... No, it's not Cat Stevens. I'm sorry. The instrumentation and just the general feel of this album is quite amazing for just one person. Really good album, too, if you're testing out like a stereo system. A lot of great panning, a lot of great stereo mix in this. I never tire of it. Kind of hard to read now at my age, even with reading glasses. Those are some tiny lyrics, but just an amazing work of art. Yeah, songs in the key of life and Talking Book. He kind of ruled the 70s, the early 70s going into the mid 70s. It just seemed like nothing could stop him. He was just constantly creating and coming up with some very interesting material. Definitely a far cry from when he was little Stevie Wonder when he was in his teens. And yeah, this is a fantastic listen. Always enjoyed that one. Don't know if you guys ever heard of this one. It's pretty rare. I don't think a lot of people talk about it. Yeah, I don't think people even bring this up anymore. I'm kidding. This is the cherry on top, as they say. Gosh, if you want an honest to goodness rock and roll album, start to finish, I'm not going to go any further. This album is so freaking amazing. even when I was a child. Just blew it out of the room. My brother brought this home as well when I was 15. Jeez, Stairway to Heaven, what can you say? It's going to be hard to do. Well, we've all seen it. We've got the t-shirts, we got the posters. This pressing is a little bit more unique than most pressings. There was a mastering engineer by the name of, I want to say, Pecco Duck. Sounds like a Lost Looney Tunes character to me. Apparently, this has a much fuller, hotter sound. Quite similar to Led Zeppelin II. Probably not as hot and not as aggressive, like really in your face. But this thing's got some amazing power than most pressings, especially the intro to Black Dog when Bonham and the band really kick in. A lot of dynamics. I'm really happy that I really spent a long time trying to find this particular pressing. Like I said, everything else that I've heard in comparison tends to be kind of buried, kind of muddy, not a lot of clarity. The bass always seems to be hollow and missing in some spots, but this one definitely has the full spectrum. Fantastic listen. Like I said, it never gets old. I never used to care for Stairway to Heaven on the radio. It just never sounded right. I mean, it was there and I heard it, but I didn't feel it. It wasn't until, obviously, with this that, I don't know, you get a pair of headphones and it's just you, and that's pretty much one of the best accomplishments in rock music, I think, that I could possibly think of. Yeah, there's plenty other more, lots of opinions on it, but that really sent him to the stratosphere, I think. I don't think anything else beat it. Physical Graffiti was fantastic. I certainly love that one. I do own it. But between Led Zeppelin II and Led Zeppelin IV, I thought back to back, it doesn't get any better for my ears anyway. This next one, this band never really gets talked about on YouTube or even in the music community. And if it does, I guess I'm missing something. But this is a gem. My father loved the Lovin Spoonful. I certainly grew up with this album. It's a double album. I think it was one of the last to be on this label. They didn't make many of them. It was like a limited edition, but really has a lot of their hits. This was such a unique band in the 60s because they weren't really psychedelic. They were kind of old school American rock and roll. If anybody in the vinyl community has heard of NRBQ, I think they were the band that carried the torch after the Lovin Spoonful folded. John Sebastian wrote pretty much the bulk of the material. Doesn't get any better than this when it comes to the Lovin Spoonful. Yeah, this is the only album that I actually own of theirs. Anything else, don't really care for too much, but I think this is just a fantastic compilation, a greatest hits, if you will. A lot of childhood memories. I think we wore out our first copy cassette within a year and had to keep making more copies. Wonderful listen. John Sebastian really is quite the John Fogerty of the group, if you will. Wrote everything. A lot of harmonica playing, that was fantastic. A lot of blues, kind of folk rock. Great stuff. Again, never tire of this one. Don't have to explain too much about this one, other than my Uncle David in the 70s, who belonged to my mom's side. He brought this into the family, and my vivid memory of him bringing this home in that SoCal living room is that we would have two elongated couches over by those large windows. And with the vaulted ceilings and the way that my dad set up the system, again, it was like a movie theater sound spectrum that he made. He would lay flat on his back on the couch. My Uncle Dave would lay flat on his back with his hands on his stomach and listen to this entire record back to front. I know a lot of Who fans love Quadrophenia. Who's Next certainly is in the canon. This one holds number one for me. I think it's because it just stems from childhood, so many memories. And as I got older, I was really intrigued to see why the concept of a deaf, dumb, and blind boy would even be remote as far as the rock and roll scene. I'm not into the subject matter as much, but I'm into the musicianship. The musicality on this album is breathtaking. For people who are barely 21, 22 years old, I mean, Pete Townsend really is a brainiac when it comes to this thing. Um, I love how the Gibson J200 acoustic guitar sounds with the SG. Those two guitars put together in the mix on this album, I think, is absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Pinball Wizard is the number one thing off of this, but starting out with the overture, going into It's a Boy, Amazing Journey, Sparks, just those 3 or 4 songs alone is just genius. The chord changes, the melody structures. Um, I don't know, there's just something about it that I can't get enough of. Like I said, I do appreciate the concept of the deaf, dumb, and blind boy. Each and every one of us, get something out of that. I truly love the musicianship on this album, back to front. Keith Moon, Roger Daltrey, John Entwistle, Pete Townsend. This is the album that kind of saved their butts. They were hugely in debt, from what I understand. They were a singles band. Nothing was really reaching number one, and he had to go home and had to save this band, is how he pronounced it or how he stated it. He had to go home and save his band. And it was one last ditch, one last attempt to really make something grandiose, special. Um, this thing still stands the test of time. The artwork alone is amazing. Even as a child, I could never really understand it, but I was captivated by the imagery and the artwork. And to hear it in that house in SoCal was breathtaking. So, yes, this is a childhood favorite that I will never tire of. This next one, again, excuse me, purr in a cup. This next one, I don't know if anybody talks about this one. We all know Joe Walsh. We know his history. We know the Eagles. Blah, 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 dee 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 do. I love his first solo effort. It was when, and it's when he, I wouldn't say quit. It's when he left the James Gang. They were a three-piece, and as we all know, most three-piece bands have limitations. He was kind of wanting to experiment more and be a little bit more melodic, I think more acoustic, kind of breaking out of the power trio thing of Cream and Grand Funk Railroad and kind of that, which there's nothing wrong with those, but I appreciate this effort a lot. There's something really murky and mysterious about this album. You can tell he's really full throttle and deep into the pool when it comes to synthesizers. I think he either borrowed or got the same one that Pete Townsend used for Who's Next. So there's a lot of experimentation on this album. It's not. I don't think there really was a single off of this one. If there was, it might have been like Mother Says. This one has really good energy. Takes you through some twists and turns. The acoustic guitar on this is beautiful. He's really starting to kind of go more kind of a folksy, not country, but kind of folk country acoustic on some of these numbers. Bird Call Morning is gorgeous. I really always loved the way that Joe Walsh played a 12-string acoustic. There was something really melodic, even if he detuned it and did drop D tunings, or did it one step lower than concert pitch or E flat. Very melodic. Mother Says is really an interesting song because you almost hear a little James Gang, but not really. And then it kind of takes you into this kind of mystical journey, this kind of instrumental that's in the middle of it. I don't think it gets talked about. I don't think it gets celebrated as much as it probably should. Once he got into the Rocky Mountain Way stratosphere, then I think this one just kind of got pushed aside, just kind of got accidentally forgotten. My favorite song on this has to be Coming Down. It's very short. It's just him and his acoustic. It's dropped down from what I hear 2 steps, and I still to this day can't figure out how to tune that low and still be in pitch on my Martin acoustic. It's almost virtually impossible, but I'm willing to try, or if anybody out there has an idea, leave something in the comments. But I really like this album. Haven't heard it on CD. I don't think there's even a reissue or an anniversary or anything of it, but really neat album. Just something that I kind of stumbled on when I bought it at Rasputin's Records in the Bay Area when I was about 16, 17. I think it's when he started moving to Colorado. Like, Colorado was just a place where he could just kind of clear his head and kind of get away from the hoopla of, I guess that was the James Gang. He kind of took it as far as he could. So this is a fantastic outing. It's a great solo album. So that one gets played a lot, especially in the winter. It just it has a winter-fall kind of sound to it. Kind of same thing with U2's October. It's not really one you hear in the summertime. My albums are kind of based around seasons. It's really weird. Like, I can listen to Tommy and really get into it when it's raining, probably because that's when I heard it the most when I was a child. So it automatically goes to those things. It's just one of those quirks. This next one is very familiar to every U2 fan on the entire planet. It is the U2's Joshua Tree. This thing came out when I was 15 years old in 1987, and man, I don't think there wasn't a song that wasn't on the radio. I mean, it was the peak of all peaks for this band. I mean, how high can you get? Some people think it's overrated. Some people think it's overplayed. Yeah, I totally get that. But this thing was huge. Like, if you had a copy of this, or you had the album, or you had it on cassette, which I still have my cassette copy. Yes, it still plays. Then you were in. I mean, you were part of the group. You were part of the club. You were part of the circle. The production in this is breathtaking. Just the intro to Where the Streets Have No Name, just the organ alone, I just get goosebumps talking about it, and it hasn't even begun the album completely. I was intrigued with this because I remember watching The Edge when I was really young and being intrigued with how stationary his face would be, but his guitar sounds were so I'm trying to think of the right word, emotional to start with, but they were just so atmospheric that the way he played, and you look at him, he kind of reminds me of Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Just never expression at all. There's nothing on his face except concentration on the instrument and the craft. And it always intrigued me because there's this sound that is so massive, and here's this expression. And I loved how those two clicked. I remember watching the video on Friday Night Videos in 1987, and it was, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And I was extremely shocked how long the Edge's hair had gotten. It was like halfway down to his back. I remember watching Live Aid, and it was just barely above his neck, so it's just like I lost the concept of time, and all of a sudden, hair. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous album. Yeah, I can't say too much about it. Massive, massive step. Huge, huge, huge accomplishment. They took a break after this. I think they were tired. I think they were tired of being taken so seriously that, hence, the change in style and, image was a complete 360 for them, because I think they were just kind of burned out and done after this. But I was really happy when they did the 30th anniversary of this, because it really deserved the treatment. This is simply amazing. As you can tell, most of my albums are still wrapped in cellophane. That's just how I collect. There's just something about having the cellophane on albums. It's like having a hardcover book with the actual slip to protect it, if you will. I don't know, I can't explain it. There's just something kind of cool about it. Makes it look like you just got it. This next one, again, I don't think really gets discussed as much as I think that it probably should. I love the Moody Blues. Anything from Days of Future Past to right around Every Child Deserves Good Favor or Flavor, or whatever that one is. Their first six albums, geez, talk about works of art. Uh, they were, I would think, really more of a studio band than a live band at this time because the technology was not in their favor. I watched a couple of the Isle of Wight performances from 1970, and man, I don't know how they did it live without a lot of monitors and a lot of manipulation that they had at the time for studio trickery, but you can tell they're really concentrating to stay in pitch. That Mellotron was constantly flat or sharp because each time you moved it, I think it knocked it out of tune a little bit. Um, I love everything that they've done up from 1967 to about 1972. I thought that was a great period. Uh, this is my favorite out of that collection, In Search of the Lost Chord. Um, Mainly because after The Days of Future Past, which was a massive record for them, Nights in White Satin, obviously Tuesday Afternoon. I'm intrigued with this because, again, they're maybe 22, 23 years old, and they play every single instrument on this album. There's not a session musician. There's not somebody that they brought in. Um, Great material. House of Four Doors is probably one of my favorites off of this because it's such a great musical journey. A lot of thought and a lot of time went into this album. Um, just an intriguing concept. But as you can look to the left of my screen, there's members of the expedition. I mean, it's staggering to see how each member played what they played. Everything from harpsichord, tambourine, snare drums, saxophone, timpani, tambourine. I mean, it's really almost overwhelming how much they put into this thing. Um, a lot of great acoustic numbers on here. Voices in the Sky. You can tell that when Justin Hayward got recruited for this band, that it was a different band. This was a band that was going to really make a big, big dent in the industry. Um, he was almost like the David Gilmour in some ways. You know, it just takes one person to come into a group that's already established and already has a pretty good criteria of stuff, and you get that one person that has those extra sprinkles that just makes the band even better and even sweeter to listen to. Um, my favorite Moody Blues album. Uh, Great artwork too. I mean, their first five albums were like storybooks. You know, just the illustrations and the musicality and the musicianship was just way outstanding. It wasn't until later that they actually became more of a live group. I think the technology improved. I think their confidence improved more so they could do a little bit more of this stuff because it was a little bit easier to duplicate. But I think they were just generally a studio band at that point. This next one is very, very dear to me. I understand why people like Blue. Blue is probably the most naked truth album, is what I call it, from Joni. She was definitely going through some situations in her life. This one really intrigues me because it's her first album. I didn't know till years later that David Crosby actually produced it. He was freshly kicked out of the Byrds and was looking for employment, most likely. But I guess he's the one who actually discovered her, took her back, I think, back to L.A. Um, I love the sound of this album. I know that David Crosby, shortly before he passed, says that he probably could have done better. He probably could have represented her a little bit better. I love how this thing sounds. There's the right amount of echo and reverb to this. I think everything was done mostly in one take, and then she would come in and maybe double track her acoustic guitar or maybe do a very similar pattern that she was doing just to kind of give it more emphasis to the song. There's some beautiful, beautiful songs on this. Some people call it Song to a Seagull. You can see how the seagulls are laid out. She was quite the artist too. Later on, she painted most of her albums, her album covers. But it's just simply to me called Joni Mitchell. Um, Very, very, very pretty album. Um, I think Marcy might be my favorite track on this. I love the way that she writes. I love the chords. Most of this album's in open tunings. I don't think she's ever in standard tuning. She was kind of a lot like Nick Drake in that aspect. I heard years later that she would never really perform her early material, not because she didn't want to. She just couldn't remember the tuning. She never wrote them down. But pretty album. Just quite a journey she's had. You know, we almost lost her to a brain aneurysm a few years ago. Bounced back pretty quick from that. I heard she's actually touring again. What an amazing resume and an accomplished musician. Definitely a good listen. This one I do suggest wearing headphones. This one's hard to hear on the hi-fi because it is mixed pretty quietly. They haven't done a reissue or they haven't done a remaster that I know of this that kind of brings the levels up a little bit. But this along with Cat Stevens' Tea for the Tiller Man back to back, great acoustic albums. I don't know if this band gets talked a lot online, but they're one of my favorites, and it's the Kink Kronikles. Ray Davies is one of my heroes. He's one of those writers that I think stands back from the crowd and takes in society, takes in emotions, takes in engagements with people. Like he people watches. I think that's his songwriting emphasis. He's a people watcher. He observes, and it's so intriguing. She likes the Kinks too. She likes Lola a lot. I think that's one of her favorites. I don't have any more Kink albums. This one does it for me. I got this growth on my face. Do you think I should remove it? Nah, probably not. I love this album. Wonderful sense of humor. Waterloo Sunset, I think, is truly a writer's masterpiece. You can visualize the busyness of the subways and the craziness of traffic and people swarming like flies around Waterloo Underground. If you do go to my channel, I do a cover of Waterloo Sunset. It's about almost 8 years old now. But I try to do the song justice. So if you want to scroll down to my videos, I do an actual cover of this. I love this album. I never tire of it. I think it really puts them in a good spotlight. This came out in 1972. Wonderful greatest hits compilation. I never tire of it. Victoria's a great kickoff. I really love its energy. If you listen closely, you'll hear his brother Dave Davies in the background kind of hoop and holler because he's just so excited. I think the band's kind of rejuvenated itself. Fancy, I think, is one of their best psychedelic hits. They're trying to do a sitar. They're trying to get a little bit of Beatles Revolver flavor to it. Autumn Almanac, I think, is great. The poetry in that is clever. Shangri-La, Lola, of course. There are some real gems in this one. Mr. Pleasant, I really have in my head when I am dealing with someone in retail that's a little bit inflated, a little bit egotistical. There is some wonderful, wonderful songs on this. Very highly recommended if you're just getting into the Kinks or you've heard Lola but you kind of want to expand your horizons a little bit. This is wonderful. Got myself a promotional copy, not for sale pressing. I'm very happy with that. Last but not least, again, not really talked about, but it's just a favorite because it is kind of separating the classic rock and the folk rock a little bit. It is the Kingston Trio's Sold Out. I love these guys. My dad was so into the folk movement when he was in his mid to late 20s. You know, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Kingston Trio, countless other musicians. I loved their chemistry. They had a wonderful sense of humor. Their harmonies were very tight. It certainly put Martin Guitar Company on the map when they put their Martin guitars on their covers. Um, this album in particular, I really enjoy. Their biggest hit, I think, probably was Raspberry Strawberries. But aside from that, there's some great renditions, some old folk traditions, Irish, some Hawaiian. Um, Normally, I don't care for straight folk music. I'm really into folk rock. So obviously, with the Beatles and Dylan, you obviously know the marriage of those two combining with Mr. Tambourine Man and Turn Turn Turn. This is a wonderful album. I don't even know if you can get it on CD. I don't know if anyone really cares or talks about it anymore. But this is one of my favorite Kingston Trio albums. Certainly look it up. A little bit of trivia. The gal, I forgot her name, but the same lady that is on this cover happens to be on the same cover as Herb Albert's Whipped Cream and Other Delights. She was quite the model back in the day, I guess, and was recruited to do a lot of album covers. There's a place called Golden Oldies over in Seattle, I think on 45th, and she used to visit that record store quite a lot and did a lot of signings for this album, and I think Herb Albert's album as well. They were up on the wall with her autographs, so she's still kicking. Anyway, those are my another top 10. Leave your comments down below. Please click like and subscribe if you like. Again, this has been wonderful. Keep the comments coming. Anybody else that would like to go ahead and give me some more comments, some stuff you'd like to see. I do have more records. If you guys want me to continue to do this, another top 10, I will. But in the future, I'm going to have a little bit more of an eclectic thing. I got some old Kiss cassettes from the 70s from Casablanca, the original pressings that I might show off. I got my stereo equipment that I might kind of show off. They were passed down to my dad, and with the help of eBay, they still run. I will try to play some music on here. I'm a little bit hesitant because I do watch people like Rick Beato and other people like that, and I see them struggling with a lot of copyright strikes, so I'm a little bit hesitant on doing cover songs on here. I can try, and no matter how much I acknowledge the publishers and who owns it now, I'm a little bit weary, but I'll try to do some originals. When it comes to showing off my stereo equipment, I may do like a 3-second snippet of a song, but I'm so scared that if I put something up here, I might get a copyright strike. But we'll just see how it goes. I'm not going to stress over it too much. But anyway, I hope all of you are doing very well. And again, thank you for subscribing and thank you for commenting. This has been wonderful for me because my work environment is the opposite of this. It is not pleasant. It's not horrible, but I can't really connect with a lot of people at my job. It's a very large place. It is grocery. So I can connect with some people, but this has been a wonderful outlet, and I can't get enough of it. So thank you so much, everybody. I do appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a good week. And remember, please be constructive, not destructive. We'll see you around.